This is the Bull Mountain Brothers podcast.
I just wanted to take a moment of your time to talk to you about one of our sponsors, F&H Contracting and Fence, located in Billings, Montana. If you're looking to spruce up your yard or want a little more privacy for them summer backyard barbecues, or maybe you just need part of your fence repaired, contact our friends at F&H Contracting and Fence by texting 406-661-7484. From front yards to farmyards and even chain link to vinyl, they've got you covered. Now back to the action.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the BMB Network, and you're listening to the 59th podcast of the Bull Mountain Brothers. It's good to have everybody here. How we doing?
It is
Fantastic.
When was the last time Matt's been gone for a while?
I think Nick's interview was the last time. Sound right?
Because we were Nick,
Been like 3 weeks.
Victoria, Josh, and then
yeah. So your last two podcasts have both been Zoom interviews.
Yeah, he got sent down to the G League and came back up. He's playing better now.
Yeah, we just got done with another awesome. I mean, we've been putting out the Zoom interviews like it's going out of style.
Now that we got them figured out.
Yeah. I mean, we had a little bit of a. What do you got there, Shawnee?
Oh, we're just gonna move.
We'll talk about that in a second.
You moved it out of
You moved it
camera.
out of camera.
Yeah,
so
but
it's
it'll be
even,
in our camera. You guys just chill.
Well, you know what I want to hear? I want to hear about your guys' shed hunting trip. That's what I want to hear.
Ooh,
Right.
All right. Let's how do we break this down? In a sense, that's not even in our camera, is it?
Just put it between the two computers. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the shed will block it. That's great.
Still don't talk about it though. I want to talk about it afterwards.
So, how do we break down this trip?
All right. Let's start with Friday night.
Friday night?
Super high hopes. We're like, all right, yeah, we're gonna find some sheds. We've never gone to Narnia before, in this time of year.
We've never really truly shed hunted Narnia.
We've never hiked. Really hiked.
The area we were in.
Well, yeah, the area that we were in.
Yeah.
And so we went for a little. We're like, well, let's go see if the elk still have their horns. I have a little ride that I go on. We just take the Ranger and kind of go sightseeing. Didn't see a single elk. Had a freak storm on the drive out to Broadview.
Yeah.
And like it lasted 45 minutes, but it was like 50-mile-an-hour gusts of wind.
I know.
And so we did that, and I had this thought in my head of like, yeah, we're gonna get up at 7 a.m. And by the end of the night, it had gotten down to like, yeah, let's just get up when we get up. What?
I'm listening to your story.
Oh,
So
and-
11
I'll
o'clock rolls around.
I'll just look at Matt the rest of the podcast then.
no. What time did we get? About 8:30. We got moving. I was laying in bed, and Sean's like, "Hey, you up?" And I'm like, "Barely."
You know what's funny is I was actually up. I was at the house that night. I was gonna go with them because we had some commercial ideas, and I do recall Sean. At first, he woke me up yelling at you to shut your alarm off at about 7 o'clock, and then because we made the decision the night before that we were gonna stay up and try to watch a movie, and
Riley made it about 0.4 seconds into the
Yeah.
movie.
was I snoring?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
He's,
But- But it was, the funny thing on that was when I woke up, because Ramsey had this.
Yeah, why didn't you guys? First of all, no, you guys didn't even try to come in there and get me to go with you. Is that what the hell
No.
is that about?
No.
no, not even when we're like.
We were like, you heard us up. If you wanted to get your ass
We
up,
literally had the
you would-
conversation like, we're not gonna wake him up, because if he had the want to go, he would have gotten up,
Yeah.
because we
Oh,
could
yeah.
see you in your room like.
I saw you moving around.
Moving
Like, you were
around.
awake.
Oh, I was awake. I was
Yeah.
awake for sure.
But the funny thing is when you say like I had to, because like Ramsey had the idea the night before, which that would have been Saturday night. That and this was a funny conversation. That he's like, we're getting up at 6. We're gonna be out there at 7, and he said that all night. And Riley and I were kind of just like looking at each other like, God, it's early. We never said anything. And then right before we all went to bed, Ramsey goes, yeah, we're getting up at 7, or we're getting up at 6:30, and we're gonna be ready to go by 6:45. And Riley goes, what are you trying to do? You think you're gonna wake up the sheds? I mean, seriously.
I was
And
like,
I'm
what are
like,
you, what are
I
you trying to
kinda
get in
was
there
like-
to get the fucking sheds before they go bed or what?
I know, and I was like, he's kind of right, Ramsey. I was like, we don't need to get up at 6:30. And then he's like, Ramsey did his little muffle, like, oh, whatever, and then went to bed. And so I woke up at, it was like 6:15 because I had to piss real bad. And so I got up, went to the bathroom, and I was like, listened upstairs. I was like, he ain't fucking awake. I was like, he's not up yet. So I went and laid back down, and then I wake up to like, I don't know, 45, 50 minutes later to for 10 minutes. And
He can sleep through an alarm.
and I'm like,
It's my superpower.
and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I walk up to the stairs, and I yell at him to turn his alarm off, and it's like Darth Vader through his CPAP. What? Turn your alarm off. Okay. And he turns it off, and I'm like, all right, we're at this point, we're getting out. But that was just, it was funny.
Yeah, and then you guys left me, but it's fine.
Oh
Wait,
my god.
You didn't
Yeah.
get your ass up. But anyway, moving on. Get out there.
I want to say it was about 9:30 when we got
Yeah.
to the spot. We
We were worried that the roads are going to be just incredibly muddy. They weren't terrible.
everything was frozen.
Yeah, in the morning, yes, they were frozen. So we went through kind of our normal route, and we had the plan of where we were going to stop and park on a section, and basically just start the trek from there. And it's just a massive coulee down into some flats that open back up into a bunch of different sort of elevation
It's like
terrain.
Badlands, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we made the hike, started moving along, did some rock climbing because we went down in the worst possible spot you could have picked.
Oh yeah, I always wondered about getting.
We
off
went
of
up
that.
the same spot too.
We did. And so we made it down through and everything. And, Ramsey called me the crevice guy that day because the only two times
We always call you that.
in the literal sense, I was the
okay.
crevice guy.
Why is that?
Okay. The only two times I've ever found sheds on that property were in, those deep crevices that are like
yeah.
water built them out, like over the years.
Well, and I would say that we've probably found them that way too, because that
Is it a crevice or crevasse?
or a coulee or a
I don't know, Matt from California. What is it?
A coulee.
Oh, okay.
because what
It's a
and
hollow.
I don't want to act like I have all this shed hunting knowledge, but my buddy that taught us how to do it back in the day always claimed that you want to look for changes in elevation, right? So that creek bottom, when
Yeah.
they're changing that elevation, or
Fences.
rivers, like when you're getting off a river bank,
Yeah.
like you find a lot of sheds on frozen rivers and frozen creeks and stuff like that.
Yeah, because
Um,
that motion of them moving, like fences are big things.
Yeah,
like-
so that makes a
jump
lot of
fences.
sense to find them in a
Yeah.
cut like that.
and that was where I found them all. And so there's a lot of those out there.
Yeah, it's stupid. There's
And
miles
so
of them.
I'm like, well, let's start because we were coming down a spine essentially. And I was like, well, let's get down this spine. And I goes, there's one on the left, one on the right. Let's pick one, see what happens. I found one the previous year and the one on the right. So I was like, chances are high. Hike down through that, realized that our plan that we had, we were veered off by almost a quarter of a mile. And so we stopped because we saw essentially it's a landmark, you could say, off that property that we are well versed with. And so we're like, oh, our shit. All right. So we turned the other way, went around. Actually, right then is when Ramsey, we were kind of coming up an incline. And as he was getting up, he was a little ahead of me, spotted a herd of deer. And all you could see was their ass. And so we're like, oh, we're going to see wildlife today. That's pretty cool. And they were walking into a group of trees. Ramsey claimed that he only saw like 4. And I was like, when I came up over the hill, I thought there was 15 or 20 in there. And essentially we're like, well, let's see if we can't keep going, get on top of this, and maybe just look at them and see if there's any bucks in there that still have their sheds on. And that'll determine how the outcome of this trip is going to be.
How much further we hike?
Yeah. And so we kind of hauled to get up, almost like it was like a stock in season for, to try and get a shot on something. And we moved, and we were still a ways away from them. And we popped up over a hill, and I was like, I looked at Ramsey, because basically where they walked was up a little hill, and then it was a flat coulee all the way up to the top of essentially a
With-
rock
Yeah,
structure.
40-foot rims. that
It
they couldn't
was
get
huge.
up.
It was probably a mile from where they were to the top. And so we got up there, and I went, there is no way in hell those deer already made it up to the top of that, because they were nowhere to be found.
Ghosts, man.
And they disappeared. And so we kept moving along. And then
Did you determine whether they had horns or not?
We didn't see any bodies,
Oh, okay.
and so
And really the way it's like, it's a big long rim, and there's a bunch of cuts that you have to walk
up and over.
up and over them.
Fingers, some
Yeah.
would say.
Fingers, yeah.
Yeah.
And so like we're just
We're really getting the hunting terminology down tonight.
and so we're like, well, I guess we'll just, because we had the plan, and the plan was kind of
I'm really messing up over here. I'm
You're
sorry.
good. You're good.
put at bay by the fact that climbing up said rock walls with wet frost on them was not going to be an option. So we're like, well, we'll just take the easiest way and just walk all over them.
Yeah.
Because we know there's one easy way where it kind of shallows out a little bit and you can get over the top of it.
And I mean, Riley knows there's only a certain way that you can actually trek up most of those fingers. So we kind of were moving. We knew that the ones staring us in the face, sort of thing. I mean, I was doing this. It's like, there ain't no way we're getting up that. So we basically started backtracking to where.
Found a lot of caves as well.
That's true. Started backtracking to where those deers went, or deers.
Deers. And the terminology's out the window.
Where the deer went into that timber. And so we started backtracking that way. And I was ahead of Ramsey by, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 yards. And I crested the top of this somewhat of an elevation change. And I saw a bunch of bodies of deer standing around, essentially a solar well in a sense. And so I was like, oh, well, there's the deer. But there was only, what, like 6?
6 or 7.
And like, huh.
We deduced that it was not the same. We think we got backtracked by the original herd because we went left. We think they went right.
Yeah.
And so we ended up finding another herd of deer, which in this area on this property, seeing deer there is like almost mind blowing because it
Yeah.
never happens.
And we figured out that they're all does and fawns. And I'm gonna let you tell the next.
So no
story.
horns.
No, we
No.
didn't see any horns.
Anyway, we're walking up, and I mean it's shed hunting, so we weren't really trying to be like
Stealthy.
stealthy. So we're walking up the middle of a valley, and at this point, Sean's ahead of me. I don't know, like 10 feet maybe. I pull my sunglasses off to itch my eye, and the wind hits him. Instantly start watering. So I'm like blinking, trying to get him cleared out, and I look over at Sean, and he's just doing this, and I'm like, "What? What do you see?" And he's like, "Elk," and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And he's like, "It's literally right there in front of us," and I still can't see. I'm like wiping my eyes furiously to try to get the water out of him, and finally,
I literally did because he like pulled his binos up and he's like, "Yeah, I am not seeing these elk." And I mean, they were probably at that point we
What did we-
ranged it.
yeah,
It was like
311 yards.
311 yards, and he's literally, I am not seeing these elk. And there's a bull standing broadside at 311 yards. I had to walk over to Ramsey and literally look over his shoulder and right at his eye line point. And he's like, "Yeah, still not seeing it." And he pulled his binos up and he looks, and that bull finally moved. And he goes, "Oh shit, yep, there they are." And we started glassing, and turned out there was
8 bulls.
8 bulls, and most of them, were I would say 3 or 4 of them were, they had tines, they weren't spikes, small, and then
The term would be raghorn.
Yeah,
cool,
I mean they were all kind of raghorns.
yeah, essentially, and then 2 or 3 spikes, and then
There was a
one-
spike in that group that looked identical to the one you shot with Matt.
Oh,
Like,
really?
Yeah.
It was like its twin. It was crazy. Same curve and everything. But so we saw that
all with sheds. So yes, that the moral of the story, they all had
horns, except for one had
biggest one-
The biggest one had one horn gun.
one horn gun, and
Well, that's what they say. They say, elk are different than deer. The bigger elk shed first. It takes it's the younger ones that lose later. So that makes all this
well, it
sense.
makes a sense.
I've been talking
the
to
weight.
Ramsey's got his buddy in town. You know him very well. It's kind of his like, I don't know, what would you call it, like a home buddy? Good friend.
He's a bike gang guy.
I don't
Like
know.
the adult version of bike gangs. That's Ramsey's. friend.
Yeah. And I really genuinely think they're right in the middle of shedding right now. I think elk, in a couple weeks, I think they're going to be done. So I think that's when. I think we'll be good in a couple weeks if we want to go back out somewhere, and I think they'll be ready to.
Like the way Riley explained it was with his vast knowledge in elk.
Vast.
He basically explained, like, everybody's seen those videos on like TikTok and Instagram of like a dude recording a herd of elk that comes through his, backyard, and it starts, doing the itch, and all of a sudden it drops the shed. Like, that is the way Riley explained it. We would basically be like, if we were face to face with an elk right now, there's a chance that it moved wrong and dropped a shed. That was the stage of shed season that we believed we were in, and
I think it's true.
I would say so. I mean, because everybody even the landowners out there were like, isn't it late? Because they were saying like, oh, we saw, I can't remember the quantity count, but they're like, yeah, we saw some elk the other day out on, some section, and they all still had horns. And they're like, isn't that super late?
See, I think that's a myth, man. People used to tell me that stuff shedded in February and January, and I'm like, that's not true to me. My experience
Absolutely not.
it seems like it's like a mid-April to early May kind of.
So in your multiple years, guiding a ranch, what is the latest you've seen, like a decent size elk drop?
Middle of May.
I mean, when was the turkey hunt last year?
End of April.
End of April.
Yeah, did we not see?
We saw bulls. They're all young.
bulls that
They're
still-
young bulls.
Right, they were raghorns, and I think
We also found a shit.
This is
too.
just me thinking
That's true.
scientifically. The weight of a 350-inch bull's horns is going to make it come off a lot sooner.
That's exactly it.
I mean,
Yeah. And I don't know. We don't know in that area what the mule deer are doing either, because we didn't see any, obviously, mule deer sheds or any male mule deer to determine whether they still had them or not.
So in
Right.
conclusion, you guys had a great time. You had a good experience, but you were almost too early. But I've seen people in the same area that are finding sheds. So I think you were just, just where you were at. They weren't
like
there
I've
yet.
said before, I think it's almost a regional thing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many different things that can boil.
So I want to talk about. You guys did a commercial up
no,
there.
that's what
I
I was
don't-
gonna say.
I don't want you guys to talk about it because I want people to see the video.
Right.
But essentially, what happened was
It was
guys-
a first for
you guys did a
us.
commercial for Right on Trek, and you guys tried their meals. I do want to hear right now how was the experience?
The experience was overall phenomenal. I can tell you from experience.
You want to use the word experience one
You-
more time?
You're not gonna give away your scoring, are you?
No.
Well, what are you talking about?
Well, you guys are
Oh.
food reviewers now.
Oh, we are.
Right,
Okay.
right. I just want to tell you from experience, all you people that use a jet boil, if you make food with your jet boil, please give it time to cool down. Because when we did our test, it was maybe 2 minutes after we had cooked the food, and
Jeez.
my
Was
tongue
it-
is still burnt.
Oh, you scolded the mouth. It
Oh,
wasn't just
yeah.
a hot. It was like
Oh,
you
it
burnt.
was
It was one of those things, is like, as you'll see if you watch the video, I was almost holding back tears. Because it hurt so. And me and Sean just kind of looked at each other like, wow, that was.
But and
really
the funny
dumb.
part is we were recording a video, so you didn't want to like.
Yeah, he didn't want to be.
It was kind of like a
I'm tough. I'm grown.
yeah.
Well, I know. I
break a
think
leg in a sense.
also
yeah.
like the same face you make when something's disgusting is the same face you make when it's hot as hell.
So it could have, I never really thought of it that way. It could be interpreted the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean, do you agree?
Except, well, I'm not going to give anything away, but the video will.
Yeah.
explain
Save
it
your
all.
guys' content for the YouTube guys to see. But
And basically what Riley is saying is this is involved in the video.
Yeah.
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 Not
this
that
is-
exact thing, but
No, but
something very extremely
This
similar.
is the product you get from Right on Trek, and it is. You'll find out in the video, but like Ramsey said, the experience was phenomenal. I enjoyed the shit out of it.
Yeah. yeah.
I think it's
it
cool.
was fun.
I think it's really cool. I think
it was a lot of
I
fun.
you guys got home and you showed me some of your content, and I was like, wow, I'm proud of these guys. You guys did really good. And how many miles did you put on?
10 and a half.
10 and a half. That's
That's what
awesome.
we figured between Sean's watch, my phone, and his phone. We
Do you think that it helped you in any way doing a shed hunt hike out there for like hunting strategy?
I'm gonna tell
or
you.
did you not really?
Not hunting strategy, but more. Well, kind of. in
I
a
would no, I
sense.
would totally agree that it was.
But
because-
more.
Like, did
along
you
the-
find some new
more along the
areas?
lines
Yes.
of what I need to do to prepare for hunting season?
That's good.
because essentially the way you looked at it, we've talked about it in the past. We lost a certain section of our elk hunting ground that we used, and so the area that we were in, we've never. I mean, there's
Put
been a
effort into
couple
it.
a couple bulls killed out on that, in that certain geographical area of that property, but I mean, as far as you two go, you guys haven't done a ton of like true stock hunting on that side of the property.
No.
Well, we really kind of deemed it garbage, but
Yeah, right. And that was like, when I came into this property too, I thought the same thing because Ramsey would be like, well, we're going to go over there, but it's terrible. It's a barren wasteland.
I know it's,
You know?
it's weird. But Ramsey shot 270-inch plus mule deer within a certain geographical location.
We never even made it that
I think
far.
that gives you a good point. We'll talk about this on another podcast, but when you talk about like finding hunting ground, looking at it like and not judging a book by its cover. I mean, have you ever really like had somewhere where you're out and you're like, this looks like shit, and you never see anything there, and then maybe a week later, all of a sudden, this crazy big animal or a bunch of animals are in that area?
Well, yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is when me and Ramsey went after deer last year and put 12 miles on hiking after it. A bunch of land I looked at through binoculars, I was like, this is junk land. Well, that's where I want to hunt this year.
Yeah,
It's like,
very similar situation.
the same thing. It looked like shitty land once you got in there. I mean, there's springs everywhere. And
Hey, you found a brown shed in the middle
Yeah.
of what was that? November?
Very, very chewed on as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you don't find it. It must have been under a tree or something.
It was in a group of small trees.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't note too is that in that specific unit in the area we were in, that was the first time I've ever seen elk there.
No, no kidding.
Seriously, that was the very first time.
And I don't think it was a coincidence.
For the amount of sign and tracks
Well,
and
not only that, but that within half a mile of that area there was a bull shot and we saw bulls. Like,
Well, and I
don't think it's a coincidence.
I had this conversation with Ramsey too, and I think this is similar to like what you guys dealt with over the time of where you're at. I think the elk are moving into the area. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that they're starting to put. I think that's why you're seeing less deer too. I think they're pushing the deer out, and you're going to have more elk, because elk, historically speaking, are starting to move into the lower lands right now. It's what it seems like to me. That's just an observation I made.
So, Matt, a question I have for you. I mean, I keep going back to this, but obviously you've hunted, guided same property for a long time. Have you seen if you were to split those years up, is the one property day one that you hunted there, or the one section, the one area of that property, any different from the one that you would go hunt tomorrow if it was archery season? Like, is the area changed? Like, are the elk moving from area to area throughout the amount of time that you've been there, or has it always been one set area?
well, I honestly can't answer that 100% because everything I've hunted has been in the same area. Just because I have not explored the other areas on foot the way me and Ramsey did. I mean, when we walked through there chasing that deer, Ramsey, I mean, the elk sign in there was ungodly.
Yeah.
Well, even think
But
of
it's also one of them deals where you're going to hike 3 miles, 4 miles into it, and you got to hike 4 miles back out with
You're
the
gonna
body.
pack it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but think about this too. I mean, even like the cave that we found last year. I mean, that like you.
And,
There's
and
stuff
we
you-
drove by that. I've been driving by that location for 15 years, Riley.
Well, and I think that, and Matt and I have had this conversation many times. When you go in, and I don't want to really dive into elk archery right now, but we change, you change, and we change our strategy every year. We don't hunt-
Sometimes daily.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, they're moving, but
I've been a peer essentially to the conversations that you guys have had when I've been with you guys on that property about it's always funny because a lot of the time, like, your guys' conversations are almost like when you guys are talking about, because the guide aspect of it, when you guys are talking about like changing up strategy, things like that. It's funny because I don't know if you felt this too, but those two like go into like their own world together when they're
Mhm.
talking. And then, Matt will come in, well, shit, why don't we just, why don't we go over there? There's obviously a bunch of elk sign over there. And Riley's like, that's a good idea. And then Riley will go the same thing. Well, shit, it's
Yeah.
well, I
funny.
also think that's something we share. We're lucky to have that kind of relationship too,
Yeah.
right? Like where we kind of just know, like we can think of the same. I don't know how to explain it. Like we just
Well,
It
it's
just
no
works.
different than you guys where you're at. I mean, you two, listening to you guys' stories, I mean, you damn near can read Ramsey's mind when you're out there hunting. I mean, you guys can look at each other and know where you're going without having to talk.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of the same for us. So we just
Well,
like,
and it's funny you say that because it was multiple times. What?
Oh,
oh, Sean.
that
No.
was me. I wasn't looking at the camera. Sorry.
God damn it. Anyway. Oh no.
What?
Okay, now I got it.
Oh, jeez.
There was multiple times like it would just get silent when we were out walking, and it's happened before. I mean, we talked about it when we went elk hunting with Chad, but we'd almost know what the other person wanted to do before we said it, but we would just say it to make sure. I mean, Sean would like look at an area and then look back at me, and I'd be like, yeah, and we would just do it.
Well, it's also kind of fun too. Like I actually like just randomly.
Do you want
like,
me to do that?
No, I
I'm
don't
pretty
want
good
to.
at that.
Sometimes like Matt and I would just call each other and just talk about it. Like, just randomly just talk about it. Like, hey, I had this idea. What do you think? You know what I mean? It's just like it's fun. It's like I don't know. It's always worth trying an idea. You know.
Well, but it's the same thing like when we're calling. I mean, we'll call a spot or be in one spot, and all of a sudden I'll start standing up, and Riley's already heading to the Ranger because he already. It's almost like in sync to where we're like, this ain't gonna work. We need to go somewhere else. And one of us is already moving before the other one, and we're like, oh shit, you know.
I would, yeah, and that's probably be from experience and experience together, probably. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's cool.
You know, and the
Again,
good,
I don't want to dive into this because
Right,
we're gonna be a
right.
2.5-hour podcast here
The-
pretty soon.
good thing that we got going on here is with the guests that we are about to introduce that we had on tonight. We had a lot of similar conversations as we just did,
Absolutely.
and you know, he shares a lot of the same values
yeah.
and styles, and
And I guess my state, I like to that quote that I like to say a lot. I think really hit home today, where there's a lot of people out there that are just living similar lives in different worlds.
and what did Ramsey say earlier? That it's funny to see that the people have the same from country to the other to country, and it's,
Oh, yeah, he really mixed that one up. That's all right. We
Just note that. Just note down that.
So yeah,
comment.
we're just gonna. That's awesome. I'm glad you guys got to get out and do something in the outdoors. I was, I don't even know what I did. Oh, I went and did some work this weekend and some other stuff. But yeah, it's cool. And then you guys got to try some right on trek. We'll do some more. I'm thinking Ramsey and I are doing our annual big fishing trip this weekend. So I think we might take one with us and do one on the riverside and do another little taste test. And then I think we're doing maybe a possible Bull Mountain Brothers trip at the end of the month, maybe if it works out.
Yep.
And we'll do another one there, and then we'll just keep reviewing. We'll keep reviewing these stuff, and we might try competitors at the same time.
You know,
compare 'em.
and one little thing that I that we left out of that trip that I think is worth putting in here is
We did not find our lost arrows.
no, we didn't find those. We didn't find any sheds. Also, Ramsey helped a calf learn how to walk.
I did.
That was really
did.
cool to watch. That was, I mean, you go shed hunting, you don't expect something like that, but that was a lot of fun. Be able to,
That was wild.
yeah,
Yeah, so you told me a story. Basically, they're calving out there, and they had 100-pound calf or something. They dropped a 100-pound calf, and you said that when they're that big, they take that long to get out.
their legs are asleep.
Their legs
So
are
they're-
asleep,
They're so hard pressed against the inside of the womb that it makes all their limbs.
and so
fall
they,
asleep.
they're Ramsey's a burly dude, so I'm guessing that's why they asked him. Basically, for you to pick it up and walk it around.
No, it's actually because I extremely.
Ramsey
Underestimated.
said to one of the landowners,
It's like that's got to be about a 50-pound calf.
yeah, and
she's
their
like, yeah.
average calf size, I think they were saying was like 80,
80,
or
yeah.
something, and so, and she laughed in his face essentially, and
It's like, yeah, no, that's a 100-pound calf.
and so she's like, no, seriously, go in there, pick it up. And so Ramsey went in there and he picked it up, and it actually, the problem was his front legs were working and they were fine, but he couldn't use his back legs because they were asleep and there was some inflammation and things like that. And Ramsey picks him up and he tried, like he did the whole like step thing and everything, and it was like Karen, essentially like Karen, one of your drunk friends. It was pretty funny. And
Was it heavy?
Yeah, it was heavy. It's 100-pound calf.
But it was cool to watch, and we just let them. After Ramsey got him up, because they've been sitting there the entire day with this one calf, trying to get him
Said it had been born at 5:30 the
the
day
night
before.
the night before. Yeah,
So about 12 hours almost.
No, like
8
almost
hours.
24.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, wow.
and so and
Yeah, I wonder
They-
at what point they're like close to potentially like losing.
well, there's
like,
we
dying.
we
Yeah.
actually learned a lot of information there. There's a certain period that the mom has to, if you don't get it back to the mom in a certain time, the mom won't take it again. Things like that, whatever. Blah blah blah. But it was funny though, because they've been sitting there this entire time waiting for this calf to essentially stand up on its own. And Ramsey goes over there and picks it up, and it tries it for the first time the entire day. And then it starts, Ramsey's holding it up, and it starts taking its own weight. And Ramsey, it's like training wheels with
Yeah,
a
it was.
kid.
Did they cheer you on after you got it to walk?
They did, and the thing was walking around. It was stumbling. We opened the pen door, and it was walking out, stumbling around. It started walking towards the door because it knew it wanted to go back to its mom, and it knew where the mom was. And it tried to make it out there. It'd fall down. Ramsey go over there, pick it up, and then we'd turn it back around. Basically, like doing physical therapy with this calf. It was really cool to see. It was a first for me.
That was a first for me.
Yeah,
That's
that was
cool.
awesome.
That is a cool little side adventure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, awesome. So we're gonna end that story there because we got to get to this interview.
Yeah.
It was a great interview. I'll tell you in a second here when I open up. But one last thing for our listeners: the turkey hunt. So we had this happen over the weekend. The dates for the turkey hunt. The winner decided that he was going to he wasn't going to be able to make the hunt. So we gave him the options. There were several different options. One was possibly doing it next year. One was he could give it to a family member or a friend. And then, the other option is, just donate it back to us and we'll just do a redraw for the people that put in for the turkey hunt. And he was a real big proponent on, getting it done now, and having someone enjoy the hunt that was available. So thank you, Ann and Derek Eaton. They donated the hunt back. And tonight, when we get done with this video, we're going to redraw on that. I'm actually probably going to make another video talking about this outside of the podcast. But for our podcast listeners, if you bought a turkey hunt in about 10 minutes, you might get drawn for it. So again, thanks, Derek and Ann. And we're just happy that we could figure out some sort of situation that, it's kind of a bummer. We were excited to get Derek out there and get him hunting, but stuff happens. We understand life's kind of crazy right now. But yeah, that's that. And that's what's going on with that. But other than that, I think we're still in the limbo mode of things that are going on within the company that are about to be dropped. April's going to be a crazy month. Stay tuned. Keep checking out these awesome interviews. We keep getting the coolest people on here.
They've been phenomenal every time.
Good to have you back, Matt.
You bet.
It was fun, as always. Just kidding. Check out this interview. Today we are here with founder and host of the Outdoor Drive podcast, Trevor Bruick. How's it going, brother?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. This is actually kind of a cool podcast to start out. As I don't know, we can just kind of break the ice here that this is our first ever conversation with another podcast, first ever interview with another podcast host. So that's kind of cool.
They're always fun. I like actually doing them because it's a different dynamic from podcast to podcast.
Yeah, and the reason I would say, let's talk a little bit about how because I run the social medias, Ramsey runs a little bit of them, and I remember about February of last year, we were starting to really get into the TikTok stuff, and I mean we were be a very blossoming young company, and at that time we probably had like 300 followers or something on TikTok. And I remember we had some video that went out, and the first time I ever noticed that someone with some sort of following, clout, some would say, followed us, and it was the Outdoor Drive podcast. So ever since, I've always looked at the Outdoor Drive podcast as like, they're kind of doing, they've been doing it longer, but they've been doing something that we're trying to get to, And so yeah, it's kind of cool to get you on here because you were kind of the first podcast I ever really saw through social media that kind of, I don't know, became the friend on TikTok or whatever.
Absolutely, man. And one of the things that I like to do personally, and I've always tried to do as a podcaster, is kind of build the relationships with other podcasts, right? Because there's 7 days in a week, and we only do an hour and a half episode. So you can always go and listen to other podcasters. Like, there's no need to have competition and work against each other. Why not work with each other and help one another throughout all of these adventures that we try to do? Because it's never easy.
You know, that's pretty cool though, that like Riley said about having the first, like, you know, podcaster being on as an interview or even just being a guest on this show. Because typically when we get people on, we kind of have to explain them, like, you know, how it works and what we structure each episode like. But obviously with you, it was just super easy. Because like, yeah, they do this all the time. Let's do it.
It's fun. Actually, I just got off of a podcast and I'm driving from my studio back to my house. So I was actually just podcasting, and you just kind of make it work, right? And I was like, oh, cool. I get to be on another podcast after being podcast. If I could, I would podcast 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I absolutely love podcasting. It's fun to meet and talk to other people in the industry.
Well, why don't we kind of transition from this conversation, save a little bit of this more for later, and why don't you kind of tell us first of all, Trevor, yourself, like, let's get your hunting background. Let's get, like, did you grow up? Because I know we've had people on our podcast. I've obviously watched many hunting podcasts. Everyone's hunting story seems to start different. You know, it could start as your dad brought you into it, or your uncle, or down the road your college friends got you into it. Let's hear about your story, man.
So my story actually starts really young. I was about 2 years old and I started fishing. I came up in a hunting and fishing family. It was really what our life was all about. Every single day, right? So my dad was a tournament bass fisherman. I would go and I'd sleep on the boat as a kid and go bass fishing. The day that my brother was actually born, I was actually fishing with my grandfather and my uncle. And ever since then, I just kind of ran with it. Every single opening day, I hunted with family, the camaraderie, the deer camp. That was all through my life. So I don't know anything other than the outdoors. And that's all I ever did growing up, having bird dogs and bird hunting and doing deer drives and just doing that constantly. And there's, living on the East Coast and in New England, there's always something going on. I'm not far from the ocean, so we're always ocean fishing or ice fishing or deer hunting or turkey hunting or upland hunting. I mean, there's always something to do here in New England, and that's one of the great things about New England. And having that family and doing that all the time was just awesome. It was a great lifestyle, and I just took it to that next level to kind of be where I am today.
Are you doing this full time right now?
So I'll take you into the story, man. So obviously throughout my entire high school career, I hunted all the time. Teachers would tell me, you can't make a living hunting and fishing. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to find a real job. Well, so at 15 years old, I started in a bait and tackle shop, and then I moved myself up to a manager of the bait and tackle shop, and had done it forever. Worked on fishing boats, and just done that forever. And then I stopped, and I was like, all right, they're right. Maybe I do need to get a real job. So I went and I had a couple of stupid, dumb jobs that I absolutely hated. And then my dad had opened up a construction company, and I went and I worked for him for a bit. And there was one turkey season about 5 years ago. My dad told me I wasn't going to be home for turkey season. And I'll tell you that about 45 minutes later, I was getting a taxi and I was riding to the train station and I was going home. So I quit my job and I went back home, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? So I opened up a taxidermy business doing European mounts, and I got beetles, and I did that all the way through there. But then I went back and worked on boats. So I went and I worked on boats and full time. So I fish full time and I have a taxidermy business. So that is my full time gig. Recently just graduated from the U.S. Coast Guard captain school. So I will be running my own charter boat this coming up season. So to answer that question, it is what I do full time. And just kind of in that grind of life of trying to make it in the outdoor realm.
Well, I think that anybody that's in this atmosphere, us four included, that's the dream. The ultimate dream is to be in the industry, as they would say, the industry, quote unquote. And I think it's awesome that you figured out a way to make that dream become a reality. Whereas, I mean, obviously we're, the four of us are trying to do that. Matt lives at a little bit because he's been he grew up, his dad is an outfitter. He's been a guide for 30 years. So, but that's not his main, he's got another business too, but you get a little bit of that life, a little bit.
Oh yeah, probably 4 months out of the year hard.
Yeah.
That is the first time I've actually, when people say they have like a passion for the outdoors and things like that, basically what I took from what Trevor just said is he essentially made his future to revolve around the outdoors. And that shows like a true passion that, some people either think they have or want to have. So that's pretty cool.
And I'll say this is honestly, it's, how many people in the industry do you see that have a broadhead company or a TV show or whatever still have full-time jobs? 95% of them still have full-time jobs while they're trying to operate their job in the outdoor industry, quote unquote, right? And the thing is that it's tough. It's a grind. It's not easy. You give up a lot, but you don't care because the passion is there. I would rather watch the sun rise and be in the turkey woods or the deer woods than I would at a 9-to-5 job. The pay's not the greatest, but you know what? You get to enjoy it every day. You get to meet like-minded people like you guys, and people who want to be there and do it. Like myself, like fishing. It's incredible. Some of the people that I've met have become some of my bestest of friends. The stories that I've heard and able to tell this day are from some of the most amazing people in the world. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, honestly. I would not trade anything to change my life to go back to that.
Well, I think that your passion shows, it shines, you know what I mean? And I let's say this, let's fast forward. We've now established the fact that you are an outdoorsman that pushes this for your lifestyle. How did that bring you to the Outdoor Drive podcast? How many years have you been doing this? And why did you start a podcast?
So right around, I was probably 17 years old. I started online forum called ctbowhunting.com because I'm from Connecticut. So a small forum. And back then forums were the way of life, right? Where you got to meet people, talk to people, tips, tricks, tactics, technical stuff on bows, so on and so forth. So I started this cool environment and group of people that got to talk a ton. And then social media kind of took over, Facebook, Instagram, so on and so forth, and forums went to the wayside. So at that point, I had met a friend or someone I became a friend of mine. And he was like, dude, you really need to start a podcast. Like, you're quite the character. And I was like, what is a podcast, right? So then I thought about it and I researched it and I got to know who he was and so on and so forth. So he actually hosted a podcast with me called East Coast Bowhunting Podcast. And we did that for probably 3 years. And it was awesome. It was great. Got to meet a ton of people in the industry and got to travel around and do a ton of really cool stuff with it. And then things went kind of south. He was not the person that I had thought he was, so on and so forth. And it was kind of pigeonholing me to just bow hunting. So then 2020, we'll fast forward to 2020, and I was like, all right, I'm starting my own podcast. We're going to start the Outdoor Drive. And what the Outdoor Drive is a full outdoor podcast about hunting, fishing, guns, bow hunting, I mean, anything and everything, camping, hiking. It's just a full on outdoor podcast. And then ever since then, man, I mean, we're pushing on 200 episodes, and it's just a dream come true. It's just a cool podcast. I have a co-host with me. We call him Madman Mardik. He's an absolute savage and an absolute phenomenal deer hunter, and it's just a great dynamic because I'm a goofball. I can't even speak properly half the time, and he kind of reels me in, and we have a lot of fun together. Um, and then we've come to now have a production side. I have three other guys, Justin, Seth, and Lou, and those guys just build hunting content for me and the YouTube side and video. And we're hoping to grow it to something a little bit bigger.
So I'm sure that at this point that you've met quite a few people from all across the United States, and something with us is every time we have something new, every time we have someone new on here, it's always interesting to see how like-minded and how similar you are in different. It's like you're living similar lives in different worlds. You know what I'm saying?
Their country, entire country across the way, and
That was
sorry, that was a struggle.
That
But
was really hard
but
to say.
and
you should speak more, Ramsey.
they're so close to like what we think as well.
Oh,
you know?
100%. That's I mean, I've never I guess when we started this, we never even researched other outdoor podcasts. I mean, of course we've heard, like, you can't not be interested in the outdoors and not hear of Solo Hunter, Meat Eater, Hush Guys, all that stuff. And so you have an idea of how people are doing things, but it's kind of funny, like a lot of what your mission point that you're talking about is like right along the lines of where we're at. And we're in a completely different world. We're over here, you know,
That's
elk,
what I was trying
elk,
to say.
antelope, mule deer. You know, of course we do, you know, a lot of the similar stuff, but you know, we love talking to you guys from back east, you know, the whitetail, turkey hunters, ocean fishers, bass fishers. It's such a different world than what we're in, but we're all doing like, we have a very similar mission, man. That's our thing too, is like, we don't want to cap ourselves by just talking about hunting and fishing. You know, last week we spent an hour and a half talking about
90s to nostalgia.
childhood nostalgia stuff. You know, it's just, we want to do something different. And I think that it's really cool to hear that there's someone else out there doing kind of a similar gig in a way.
And you know, that's the cool thing about it. And one of the things in podcasting, like, of course, so like we have like personas, like I just said, like Steve is Madman Mardik. I'm East Coast Trev. So like we like to break it down where guys get to know who we are and like what we actually do. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't need to be about hunting or fishing. We could go into a rabbit hole and talk about, I mean, anything, man. I don't care. You know, anything. Those things is what makes us who we are, and kind of, you know, is the turning wheels in our minds, honestly.
You know what's a really funny part about essentially the beginning of Bull Mountain Brothers, and I'm sure you probably went through the same thing, was all the technology that goes into a podcast and all these, you know, blue collar guys trying to figure out how to connect cords to the right holes and things like that. It's just funny how much like you build in, I mean, what is this 59th episode now for us? And it's building from that to the point we're at now where we're like, oh, we could do this. And then like we had in the beginning of this episode, that stuff happens. You're like, I have no idea what to do here. It's just funny how the progression of a podcast is essentially pulling your hair out the entire journey.
Well, let me ask you this, Trevor. What has been your guys' biggest, like, what's been the hardest thing for you guys to overcome as a podcast?
So one of the biggest things that we probably have gone through is exactly what you said, the technology aspect of it, because I'm just a dumb redneck and literally I don't do anything technically. Like, I'm not technically inclined at all. I can't use a computer to save my life. It's been one of the biggest struggles, and editing film, editing podcasts, editing anything has been absolutely horrible. And I've lost podcasts, forgot to hit record multiple times, a ton of that stuff. And it's just a growing pain. Like an hour and a half in, and I'm like, oh shit, bro, I didn't even hit record. We got to restart. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I didn't hit record. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. We're going to have to start this one over. It just happens, dude. That's part of it.
It's hilarious that you say that because actually we started on one of those type of malfunctions. The very first podcast we ever did, which was in our spare bedroom in our house,
So essentially, we called it the pilot episode.
the pilot episode, we recorded. It was like, I don't even remember how, it was over an hour. And we're like, all right, let's listen to it and see what it sounds like. Sounded like absolute hot garbage. It cut out like every 3 seconds. And at this point, it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Sean was getting ready to go to Spokane in the morning. And
He was
like,
already on the road. He was about 45 minutes away on the way
Yeah.
to Spokane.
and we were listening to it and we're like, we got to redo this. Like, we already told people we were going to drop on this date. And so we had to drive all the way back and we had to figure it out. I think we were up till like 2 a.m. recording a podcast.
All you can really do in those situations though is laugh,
Oh, yeah.
because it's
It's
obviously
funny now. At the time, it really sucked, but
right. I mean, you're kind of like it's kind of like an evil laugh, because you're like, I want to just bang my head against the wall, but it's funny. Yeah, it was a nightmare.
That growth and progression, though, is super important. So, like you guys probably notice it, where you'll have, and you could probably see it in the back end, right, where a lot of people won't be able to see this, but you'll have people that come and listen at episode 50, and they go back and they start listening from episode 1, and they watch that growth and that progression, and it really kind of solidifies, or it makes a full picture for them of who you guys actually are, and they become friends of yours, and they talk to you, and you meet them at shows, and you see them places, and they'll say stuff. I have a ton of people or listeners or supporters that literally will come up and they'll say something funny from episode like 15, and you're like, bro, you actually listened to that? Like, you made it all the way through that podcast, bro? Oh my God. And I can't even remember half the stuff. Like, they'll make jokes, or they'll write jokes on one of our group pages, and I was like, I really said that? I can't even believe I said that. And it was from 100 episodes ago. And you're like, that's pretty cool. Honestly, I think it's one of the cooler things that happens.
Do you ever go back and listen to some of your early stuff from like the very beginning?
God, no. I would cry. I don't. No, absolutely not. No. So in the first podcast, East Coast Bow Hunting, we were sponsored by a brewery, and I remember weekly we would pick up a case of IPAs, and there's many podcasts that I don't even remember doing, and some of the things that I said were obscene, and I probably shouldn't have said them, and they've then gone on the internet. So I do not listen to any of my past episodes or go back to some of those because they're bad. They're brutal.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing that we really just, the only thing that I would say we hate about this process is like trying to keep yourself professional enough in a way that you don't say something you don't want to say, and like we're really hard on each other about, making sure that something like that isn't done, but it's annoying. It makes it way more stressful than it needs to be, because at the end of the day, and I don't know how you guys feel about doing the podcast, we want it to be like 90% fun. We wouldn't probably be doing this if we didn't enjoy most of it.
So one of the things that I live by, and what you just said, I wouldn't say anything on a podcast that I wouldn't say in real life. And one of the things that I live by is raw, real, no bullshit. Because people attach to you and talk to you that way. And it's the same way that I talk on this podcast as I'll talk on any other podcast. And it's the same way I'll talk in deer camp. And it's the same way I'll talk in public. Yeah. Because it's just, you have to be true to who you are. And to try and build something that you're not, then people really, you lose that trust factor. And it's really important to be real and who you actually are. And I live by that.
So let's talk about the industry, right? Do you feel like, and I think this is a good conversation because we've had this many a times on here. Do you think that sometimes when you watch a lot of the stuff that's out there, like the most popular stuff, that it is not as raw and real as something like you and your podcast, our podcast, someone like us is? Like, it just, sometimes that's what, and I like what you say there, because that's something we talk about all the time, is like, we don't want outsourced editors or anything like that, because we don't want to lose our voice. And we think that like what Bull Mountain Brothers is real. And that's what I like to see about the Outdoor Drive, is it's authentic. It's, if I'm going to say fuck, I'm going to say fuck. Right. and I think that
Mhm.
kind of rides along the lines of what you're saying. And I think that there's like a new upbringing of like the outdoor industry where it's a bunch of guys like us that are like minded and just want to be real instead of just trying to put forth a product to make yourself look good.
So I totally agree, and I've done some filming with some TV places and this, that, and the other thing. And going back and making B-roll and that, it's not true to what we are. One of the guys that I look up to, and you guys might not even know who he is Kurt Geyer from Working Class Bowhunter, and he was somebody that kind of took me underneath his wing and kind of helped me and pushed me along. And for us, he paved that road of raw, real, no bullshit, where he's not afraid to swear. He's not afraid to call out the people in the industry that are doing something wrong. And I think it's really important because the industry has gone from what it was when we were growing up and watching those things in the industry to what it is today. It's so fake. And there's a lot of people that sugarcoat a lot of things. You have the huntresses, you have all these people that are making all of these fake things, and all of these new generations that are joining into the industry are trying to follow in those things, and it's so bad that's what they have to watch. So guys like us being raw and real, I think brings back that, and people can actually be who they should be and be accepted. One of the things, like Steve, who does the podcast with us, Madman, he literally, like, like you talk about like going to ATA or going to some of these shows, and these guys are wearing, and no offense to anybody, honestly, if this is the way that you dress or anything, but they wear square toe boots, they wear their flannel shirts, they tuck them in, this, that, and the other thing. And Steve has no problem going to a show in a hoodie, pair of jeans, and a pair of Jordans. Like, he just is himself. And it's so important, because I think a lot of people attach to that, and they can be themselves and not have to worry or fit the mold.
Right. I don't think that, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I would never think that, like, let's just say overnight we became some viral sensation, right? It's possible. I mean, it's possible for anybody, right? I could never see myself changing, right? But I think what happens is it changes people. I think that they become some sort of like power hungry celebrity status, and it takes it away from the Bull Mountain Brothers podcast, right? And Outdoor Drive podcast may be the same thing. It will never change me as a person, because at the end of the day, what I value is my life in the outdoors, the spiritual feelings that I get from bow hunting, the things that it plays with me, the camaraderie with my friends, all of that will never change me as a person. And that's why this is a good conversation. I'm glad that we're on here having this conversation, because it's true. There's a lot of people out there that are pushing an agenda and making something that isn't really what the average outdoorsman is interested in.
I totally agree with you. And a lot of the times, money and sponsorships will change people tremendously as to who they are not. And it's kind of scary to see. And I know damn right sure that there is not a dollar in this sponsor that'll stop me from saying or doing what I 100% believe. I would not take that sponsorship, and I would not take that money, because I am who I am, and I will forever be that person. Even if we have this conversation in 20 years, I'm going to forever be that person. And there's plenty of people in the industry that are who they are. Ted Nugent is one of them. That guy is probably one of the biggest, I guess, savages, you can say. Tim Wells is another one. Those guys don't care
Love
that
Tim
they
Wells.
cuss, they swear, like they don't care. I mean, you could have a full on. We could both walk up to him in a convention and shake his hands, and he's gonna swear just like he would in his TV, or tell the story about how he did something wrong. And that's the way that it should be. The bad things that happen on gut shooting an animal or whatever, that needs to be shared, because that's reality. And a lot of these people are coming into this and going hunting And then when they do put a bad shot on an animal, they don't know what to do because they've never been taught it. And I think it's very important to be real and show exactly what happens on the day to day in the outdoors.
I totally agree with that, and it seems like like what Riley says or said about the more popular people in the industry. It's almost like they're monetized by somebody within their company, you know. So you could meet them in person at a professional event, and it's a totally different person if you were friends with him for 5 years or something, or his neighbor for 5 years. And it seems like sometimes you can pick up on that within, watching videos, listening to podcasts, things like that. And it just kind of, removes your interest from somebody like, I mean, for me at least, I don't know about the majority of the population, but when somebody's not real, you can definitely tell.
Well, let me ask you this, Trevor. Let's say that someone, I'm going to explain to you how I think that I would want to handle this situation. You tell me how you feel about it. If I was to go hunting with, let's say that John Doe from the Buck podcast came on, right? They came to Montana and they went on a hunt with us. I want them to go back to their people and say, these guys were a great time. They were educational. They were good. They didn't try to tell me what to do, but we had a good time. We had a good hunt and I enjoyed the experience. I want to go back to Montana. Things that I've heard from other, like, again, these large popular podcasts is like a lot of these guys are dicks and we don't want to be around them. I don't know how they outdoor. I feel like you'd feel the same way, where it's like when someone does anything with me in the outdoors, or even like you said, a show, or like right now we're doing a podcast. I want someone to go back and say, hey, those guys from the Bull Mountain Brothers are a good time. I don't want to be, I don't want to use my ego to be the dicks of the industry,
Oh, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. And I think that, and the people that we're talking about is such a minute group of people, right? There's a lot of people that are real like us as, like you guys being out west and us being here on the east. Like, we get along because we have common interests and we probably have the same beliefs as, like we had said earlier on the podcast. But there's that group of people is so small, right? Like, I'll give you one example. So Chris Brackett, I don't know if you guys know who he is.
Is that the Arrow Affliction guy?
No Evil, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so he was one of my big idols growing up. And I had met him at a show, and I literally walked away from his booth, and I was like, that guy is the biggest dirtbag I have ever met. I honestly could not stand to talk to him. He was a complete douchebag. He actually tried cutting my beard. It was actually what happened. And he's just a tool bag, man. And I think that a lot of people, that's a small group of who those people are, is that those are shit bags. And there's a lot of people I've walked away from, a lot of other people that are leading in the industry, and they're great people. They're some of the best people that you could honestly ever talk to.
Yeah, and so when Ramsey's my brother, if you don't know that right now. This podcast was an idea that we started, and Sean came along and blew it up, and then Matt came along and we just turned it into what it is today. When Ramsey and I first sat down and said, let's do a podcast, our whole idea was to do a podcast, to do interviews like we're doing right now, to give voice to those that normally don't have the voice, right? Like your rancher, hunt, landowner, whatever, that's just has these old time stories. And I think that's been the most fun part for me along this journey, is the people that I've noticed that we've met. Like, we just had a pretty cool, I would say, higher class interview a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
And that was fun, but I will never stop enjoying the fact that we get to talk to like a lot of these small, like we had some fly shop owners, some fly fishing clothing apparel seller people. Some of the best people I've ever had the opportunity to have a conversation with is those local people just grinding, trying to do what we're all doing, like you're out there doing the fishing trips and the taxidermy stuff. Like, that's some of the best people on this planet are those guys right there.
I love that you guys are like that because that's something that I strive for is to find those people in the nitty gritty that don't have a name in the industry, right? Because they have some of the best stories. Some of the biggest deer killers here on the East Coast, you will never see a picture of them on the internet and you'll never hear their story on a podcast. And they have the best stories and they've killed the biggest deer. And they don't talk about it because they've never had an avenue to talk about it. So I like the Outdoor Drive, loves to find those people. We have the Outdoor Drive as one podcast, and then we have the Tales from the Tailgate, which Tales from the Tailgate is just hunting stories. Like if one of you guys shoots an elk, we'll have you on and we'll have a 30, 45-minute discussion about just that. When you roll up on that guy and then he tells the story. Because some of those people have some of the best stories, crazy stories. I've heard some gnarly stories and you're like, dude, what in the hell? How did you have the chance to do that? Or, they shoot a 200-inch deer and it's never been talked about ever. Or we had one a couple of weeks ago, the guy shot a 720-pound black bear here in New England. It's insane. It's the size of a grizzly bear.
Right.
I mean, it's insane. So those people are the best people, I think, and they need a voice in this.
Yeah, I love that. We actually have something similar to that. We call it the Wall Tent Chronicles. It's not a separate entity. It's a style, but it's kind of funny. I love it. I love how similar styles, man. I it's a lot of fun to talk with someone that's like-minded. We could probably talk all night. So why don't you tell me, like, what does the Outdoor Drive podcast look like today? What is it? Tuesday, April 4th of 2023. What does it look like today? What projects are you working on? And what does your podcast look like today?
So, like I had said before, so we have the Outdoor Drive, which is our full-on podcast that comes out every Thursday. Our Tales from the Tailgate comes out on Tuesday. That's just, like I just said, a 30-minute cool little podcast, just back and forth about, hunting stories. And then we started our production side, and that is just, content, social media content creation, and also our hunting videos that are on YouTube. We're working to try and move that just a little bit bigger and kind of push it out maybe someday on some type of a TV platform. But that all takes time and money, and it just goes from there, man. And we just got done with show season. We did 7 shows, and we just went there to just kind of push our name and our brand, and just some recognition there. And we're just kind of living it, man. And it's really just like you guys, just the camaraderie, just a good group of guys that get together and have beers and tell stories. We have a huge family. We do family events where, the wives come over and spend time together and go and do things. And it's just really just sharing our story of what we're doing in our adventures, man. We're no different than anybody else. We're no more special than anybody else that's doing it. We just want to share our story. And if we could help somebody along the way and get them to do something out of the norm for them, that would mean the world to us, honestly.
All right, buddy. You have to tell me, though, because every time I have someone on here, I want to try and support you a little bit. I went on to buy some Outdoor Drive merch. What's going on with the merch right now?
So, all right. So that whole thing right now is down because when we had gone from a podcast to a video production, we actually just rebranded. So that's where that all falls into place. We changed the logos, and so our merch is not out and up and running right now. It will be here shortly. Because we did new logos and working with new companies to try and get our merch and stuff out. So that's down at this point, but it should be back up in the next week or so.
All right, dude. Sweet. Cause I want to get something in here. I want to get like a sticker on the wall or something. We like to show, we got some stuff going already, but
how long have you been doing YouTube? Filming hunts and things like that.
So I started filming my hunts in 2016. I started filming all my hunts 2016, 2017, but really haven't started to turn my stuff out until about 2019 is my first hunt that I actually turned out. It's been fun, dude. It's something that I don't leave home without is my camera. A lot of turkey hunts. I've filmed a lot of turkey hunts. I do a lot of youth hunts here in the state, getting youth hunters out and bringing them out turkey hunting or waterfowl hunting. And then my deer hunts. I film all my deer hunts. So it's been fun. It's just been a really cool thing to go back and watch a hunt. I killed a really nice deer in 2020 on a public piece, actually in Ohio, and I filmed it. And now to go back and watch that hunt, it's just real. It's really fun. It really honestly is.
Do you find yourself picking up that camera instead of like your bow on accident sometimes?
So pretty funny story. So that deer that I was just talking about in 2020, I killed in Ohio. He came out of this bedding area and he was making a rub. Actually, I'm sorry. I was filming a smaller buck that I wasn't going to shoot, and I'm filming him and this, that, and the other thing. And the deer was acting really weird. And then the woods like exploded, and there was like crashing and smashing and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I look over my right shoulder, and there's this just absolute giant making a rub and a scrape. And I'm like, I got to get this on film. So I turn the camera to him, and I start filming him, and he's just absolutely blowing the woods up, just smashing it to smithereens. And he starts to come out of this bedding area, and he comes out, and he's at 33 yards. And I'm like, dude, I got to put down the camera. I got to grab my bow. And I literally just kept filming him. And then he turns and he starts to come towards me. And then that's when I grabbed my bow, and I ended up killing him at like 22 yards out of the saddle. And I ended up getting the whole thing on film. But honestly, I would have rather filmed that animal, because it was absolutely incredible to film him and get him on film and everything that he'd done. It was probably one of the first times I've ever seen some of the stuff that he had actually done on film. So it was really cool.
That was one question I was going to ask you. Do you think, you've been filming your hunts for a while now. Do you think anything changed with like your style of hunting, or, I mean, maybe not that far, but essentially just your outlook on hunting trips as you started filming? Did anything change?
Yeah, it changes a ton, man, because you're always thinking, going back to that raw reel, you're filming your B-roll as you're doing it. You don't go back and do it after. So you take that time to film all that stuff as you're doing it. As you're getting ready at the truck, you're filming. As you're walking in, you're filming. When you're in the tree stand doing interviews with yourself, you're doing that in the tree. And it definitely changes you. I also then went to mobile hunting because I don't know how much stand hunting you guys do out there, but we hunt out of a tree all the time. Very little spot and stalk other than like in the snow. So you're in the stand. So I went mobile hunting and started saddle hunting just to bring down my gear that I had to carry in the woods and be able to make room for my film gear. And I don't go in the woods without a camera. I would rather leave my weapon at home and go in with a camera than I would, than to only bring my weapon and not my camera. Because there's so many things that you capture on film that you can share with others and your experiences.
No, I like that. That's awesome. I think that we're trying to get to that. We're having an opposite problem where we get like we get so like too into the hunting part of it. And then we're like, oh God, we should have filmed that. Like my bull that I shot last year, Matt and I, we had an amazing experience, and ended up shooting the bull. And then, cause I don't know, we just had like a brotherly moment too. Like it was cool to finally, get that done on the season last year. And then we just sat there for a second. We're like, wow, that would have been really cool to have filmed.
Yeah.
But
It happens.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
It's one of those things that you have to. That's where you have to find the balance, right? Where what do you want to have on film, and what do you just want to enjoy the hunt? Because there's a lot of times where I won't shoot something because it's not on film. Where some of my other guys, they literally will shoot something if it's not on film. But I just made that decision in myself, and not for anybody else but myself, to get everything on film, because I like to go back and look at those films, and they've helped me a lot in my hunting, where when I shoot an animal, I can go back and watch the film to see how I can move myself forward to be able to recover that animal properly. This year, I shot another deer in Ohio on a public DIY hunt, and I shot the deer. He was quarter in two, and I went to go shoot for the shoulder, and I actually was back behind the shoulder, which then would have been more of a liver gut shot instead of, a lung heart shot. And if I didn't have the footage, I probably would have pushed that deer and not been able to recover that deer. And then going back and looking at that footage, I knew not to push in on that animal. So that's where I use it as I have to film, because then I can see where my shot was, my shot placement, and then I could move in on the animal properly.
I totally understand what you're saying, because like I've watched a lot of like the the more popular hunting videos that come out on YouTube and stuff like that, and they do that all the time. Like they'll draw back, shoot something, and be it felt good, and from my split second before I blacked out after shooting, like it seemed like it was good, and then they'll go back and watch the video and realize, oh shit, I was 2 inches high and 5 inches back, and it's like, oh shit, okay, so now we know there's probably not going to be a ton of blood, and and they kind of rearrange the style on how they're going to track that animal.
Yeah, and I'd say like, the only deer hunt that we even filmed a little bit of last year was Matt's daughter, and it worked perfectly in that instance because we did the same thing. We were able to look back and see exactly where the percussion, the waves hit on the vitals to see if what we were chasing at that point. And so yeah, it's a good strategy.
It really is a smart way of doing things. One question I had for you.
And then you don't miss out on it because. Yep.
Sorry about that. That was just a little bit of lag there.
No, you're good.
The one question I had is I always like asking people from different states. You being from Connecticut, I've never actually talked to somebody from Connecticut that is in the outdoor hunting world.
I've talked to someone from Connecticut ever.
That's because you can't even say it.
What is a typical season like hunting wise? In like break it down for me. I want to know. Obviously you guys got whitetail and turkey and things like that. Like coming into whenever your season starts till it ends, what does that look like for you?
So we actually are pretty lucky here because our bow season starts. Well, we'll start turkey hunting here in April. That'll take us in, and then I start fishing June, July, August, and then September starts our whitetail season. And our whitetail season starts September 15th every single year. You're given 4 tags, so I can shoot 2 does, 2 bucks. And that season goes from September 15th till December 31st. And then they add in, gun season. So we have shotgun season, rifle season, muzzleloader season. We can, here in Connecticut, I can shoot with all of my tags. If I buy every single tag, I can shoot 15 animals, 15 whitetails. Also, we have, yeah. And then we have some management zones, which are baiting zones where we can actually bait. It's unlimited does, and every 3rd doe, you get a buck tag. So you could literally shoot as many deer as you want here if you're in the right zones or areas. And it's totally different than anywhere else I've ever hunted, especially to be able to take that many animals, which then brings down the caliber of deer here. Because everybody is shooting smaller deer. There's not a lot of like conservation management on animals because they're like, oh, well, I'll just shoot that smaller deer because, I can because I have another tag left. And the people here, honestly, and on the conservation aspect of it, honestly, they really don't care about managing the animals here. Our turkey season, we just went to 5 turkeys 2 years ago, and it is absolutely absurd. There's no reason to be able to shoot 5 turkeys here in this state. Every other state in the entire country, the most is like 2. So I don't know why we have 5, but the management and conservation of the animals here is out the window.
Is that
and it's kind of sad.
Is that because of overpopulation that you're able to shoot that many deer and that many turkeys?
That's what they say, but in my opinion, It's really not. It's a very liberal blue state, and I think one of the thoughts and on all of it, honestly, is I think a lot of the people that are voting for a lot of this stuff, they think no animals, no guns. Um, and it's kind of sad, to be honest with you. Um, it's kind of ridiculous.
So in the past years, I guess you guys have like hunting check stations that you like go through, like you'll have wardens at things like that you check.
So in past years, yes. About 5 years ago, that went out the window, and everything is all electronically done. So there is no more check stations. You literally go online, and online you fill out a survey, and they give you a confirmation number. You put it on the bottom of your tag, you put it on your animal, and you go on your way. So it opens up a lot of doors for illegally tagging. You can literally not tag anything because there's no checks and balances on it.
Is there any surveys done that show like actual deer population now after that change?
So they still do the surveys, but it's all based on online. So it's all based on however many people went and got a confirmation number, and then that's their survey that's done.
That can't be that accurate.
Well, and see, it's really interesting coming from a state that's like completely opposite. You know, Montana is like, Montana's proud of their shit in a way, I guess is the way I would explain it, right?
Yeah.
So like all of our rules and stuff is like they're not loose, they're annoying. They're tough. They're you're always looking over your shoulder to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Even if you've read the regulations front to back, it's a tough state to be in, and it's interesting to hear from someone that's in a state where you probably care more than your government does, is what I'm getting.
And it's so true. The biologists are just like, so with the turkey hunting thing, the biologist was so against the 5, and we can also hunt all day when we used to be able to only hunt till noon. And the biologist didn't want it, but they literally voted against him. And it was kind of sickening. I think that like you guys, Montana, Arizona, stuff like that, that motto that you guys fulfill every single year when it comes to your wildlife, it needs to be pushed out here because it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, as far as your whitetail go, how much do they actually weigh? Like on average?
So a good whitetail weighs dressed about 180. That's a good whitetail. Like our bucks are about 180 is a real good whitetail.
What was
dressed.
yours?
What's that?
What was yours?
276.
Yeah.
Hanging.
The bodies are like from eastern to western side of the country. I've heard that from a lot of people that the bodies of whitetail, obviously because that's all they have in most places on the East Coast, they're smaller. The antlers and everything like that, you can go 1,000 different ways depending on where you sit on the border of those. But the body wise, I've heard that it's true that they are just smaller.
Well, I believe the whitetail I shot was like I got back like 128 pounds of meat.
Yeah, that's like if you so Midwest deer, you get back into that big deer stuff, and then obviously the West is big deer also. But like on the East Coast, if you start to go down south, the deer are tiny, absolutely tiny. They shoot, a deer, full is like 150 pounds. Like Georgia, Florida, stuff like that. Like they're tiny little deer.
Yeah, that's why, because we've got a lot of friends from down south that we've had on here, and some of the deer that they like, and I'm a big proponent on, or a big advocate on, like, I don't like to hunt shame. I don't think it's right. I don't think that I'm gonna sit here and say like you shoot, say something because you shot a small animal. We don't do that. But I will say I have noticed that it seems like some of the the people that are doing the posting and doing the similar stuff like we are, the deer from down south is like their trophies are like, I'm just like looking at it like I wouldn't have even probably batted an eye at that, and it's like down there it's a trophy.
And I think different regions have different deer, right? Where like the northern deer to here, they won't shoot a deer unless it's dressed weight over 200 pounds. So like when the guys in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, those guys, they track deer. And if it's not over 200 pounds dressed weight, they literally will not shoot the deer. And they go by body weight. They don't go by antler size. They don't care if it's a spike horn. If it's over 200 pounds dressed, then they're going to shoot it.
Right.
It's just different regions have different things. Where like here, everything's on antler sizes. They don't care about the body of the deer. But you go 4 hours north of here, and they're about the size of the body, not the antler.
You know, that's super interesting to hear that, like, because I've always heard the border running north-south that splits the United States as far as, deer population, everything about deer, sizes, things like that. But it's interesting to hear that there's a east-west one on the eastern coast as well that basically splits, runs through and all that southern stuff. And a funny story, I had a buddy that was stationed in Texas, in the Army at Fort Hood. And he's a Montanan, and, he had a bunch of friends that he met down there that are from Texas. And he showed them a picture of a mule deer he shot up here, 4 years ago or something. I think it was maybe like a 145-inch mule deer, not like a giant by any means. And they thought it was the biggest thing they've ever seen in their life, because they were showing him essentially the same way that he presented that mule deer to them. They were doing that on like a barely 100-inch whitetail, something, like something like
Their
a 3-point. And they were like, is that an elk? Like they had no idea, and obviously that's per, two different species, but even with whitetail, you could do the same thing. Go down to Georgia and compare whitetail. I mean, it goes both ways.
I totally agree. It's like when we go out to the Midwest and we shoot deer out there and we come back home and you show guys and they're like, oh my God, that thing's absolutely giant. But it's only a 140-inch deer, when on average, if you're shooting a 125 or bigger here, you're doing something. That's like shooting a 150 or 160 in the Midwest.
Are you guys do you say 8-point or 4-point? What do you guys do for your sheds? I don't know where that line stops. Is that a southern thing?
No, we do 4-point sheds.
Okay.
4-point sheds. Yeah.
That must be a
I
southern
don't think
thing.
that's what you were trying. I don't think you meant to ask him on sheds. I think
like when you look at
on
a
a
deer, it's a 4-point. It's a like
Well,
we
well,
say
it's a
a
4x4 and
4x4.
8-point.
Or
Yeah,
is
what
it,
do
or
you
is it
call
an
it? If there's-
8-point?
Oh no, it's an 8-point. It's an 8-point.
Really? So that's just got to be an East Coast thing, huh?
Because everything we do around here, it's
Yeah.
like I shot like a 5x4 or 5x5. It's not
Yeah.
a 10-point,
Yeah, we only
Yeah.
talk about one side.
Yeah.
4-point. 4-point is 4 and 4 on each side.
That's I have a really good buddy of mine that we breed dogs with, and he's from the Dakotas, and he's always like, oh, look at this 4x4. And I'm like, bro, that's a fucking 8-pointer. What are you talking about? That's a fucking 4-pointer. Like, dude, come on, it's an 8-pointer, bro.
Dude,
and we go back and forth all the time about it.
I'm cool with calling whitetail like the 8-point and stuff, because it's all on one main beam. I mean, obviously they're not connected, but you have, like, if you look at it, it's like a main beam. So like I've actually kind of started, and I think my buddy Josh
Don't-
kind of got me this,
Don't
where it's like I might almost refer to one as like, but I still won't.
Yeah, it's just like I wonder where the term difference happened. Who was the guy that was on the East Coast that's like, oh, that's an 8-point, and the guy on the West Coast like, oh, that's a 4x4.
Well, if you think about it realistically, if you're gonna reference something and it has 9 points on it, calling it a 9-pointer is really not the wrong way to look at it.
6 one, half dozen the other, I guess.
If I look at it right, like if I'm gonna call a mule deer a 4-point, right? Like, oh, there's a 4-point. If I'm looking at it, just thinking about this as we're sitting here, that is kind of dumb, because it's got more than 4 points.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at, but we're like you said, we're just looking at one side,
Right.
because I think it would be super weird for me to sit down and go, if there was a 4x2 up on this wall, I'd be like, oh, that's a 6-point. I'd be like, okay, that doesn't make any logical sense to me unless I was from the East Coast thinking it's a somewhat perfect 3x3.
Right.
It's just that I don't understand that.
So that's where I get upset, because guys will be like, oh, I shot a 12-pointer. And in my mind, that's 6 and 6, where that should be whatever it is. Say it, you know what I'm saying? Like it should be a 7 and a 4. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that I drives me nuts.
So do people
because
still do
I'm
that?
like, oh, dude, you shot a yeah, dude. Everybody like all the time. Guys will be like, oh, I shot a 12-pointer, and like it will be 7 on one and 4 on another or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, dude, come on, like that doesn't make any like it's not the vision that I'm getting. Where if they said it like you guys said it, then it would make more sense.
That's what I'm
That is true.
saying. I'm
7 by
saying, yeah,
4?
when you got like kickers and drop times, things like that you're adding points to, it makes more sense to say it as we do because, like he just said, somebody shot a 14-point buck, and you're like, that is a huge whitetail. I mean, that thing has to be the biggest whitetail that has ever walked this earth. And you're like, oh no, it was a 9 by whatever the math there is, math.
5.
Do you think that guys, like, because we talk like this, right? Do you think that people that start talking and scoring is douchey, or like, do you think it's like the new way to talk about hunting?
Trevor, do you talk about score like when you're like scouting a deer? Do you like to yourself or to like your buddies that you're hunting with? You go like, oh, I just saw a deer up on that ridge. I bet you he's probably like 135 inches. Like, do you do that?
I do that, and something, and it kind of goes against everything that I believe in because honestly, I mean, when I'm talking from friend to friend, like to get just a bearing of what that deer is that we're chasing, then we'll talk like that. But it's like I just said, it's totally against everything that I've ever believed in because the whole deer shaming thing or talking down on somebody. Like I shot a 166, but I don't go around and go, oh, my 166. You know what I'm saying? Like it does make you sound douchey, and it shouldn't be about the score of the deer. Because somebody who's listening
But
to
you don't do that.
well,
No,
it's
no,
so
No,
but
just
no,
don't.
no, but you're right, man. Like, think about this. Like, it's such a good way to explain what you're trying to look at. Like, if I explain to Sean, who is a good hunter and is around it and stuff, if I'm like, hey, I saw this deer, if I explain to you it is, I saw a 4-point and it was decent, but I could be like, hey, I saw I saw this deer and it was probably like a 145-inch mule deer. Like, you get a better like idea, I feel like, of what I actually saw.
Yeah, it's true, and it's like Trevor said, you do it with your friends, and sometimes like I'll find that like with we have some people that are supporters of ours and things like that aren't totally down with the terminology within hunting, and so I'll be talking to them, and they're friends of ours, right? And I'll be talking to them, or say Ramsey and I are with them, and we're having a conversation, and we're talking about last weekend, we were archery hunting for elk, and we saw like a 185-inch mule deer, like 400 yards away up on a hillside. And to them, they're probably like, "What the hell does that even mean? Is that big?" But I don't know if it's the cool thing to do.
There's certain scenarios for each type.
I do
It
feel like
is.
it's trendy. Like, I don't remember. Do you remember like 5-10 years ago people referencing stuff like that? Maybe.
No. Like with
No.
our clients, a lot of our guys, I mean, we've shot some 180, 200-inch deer off the property over the years, but 130 or 150-inch deer, people, when they say 180-inch deer, most people don't know what a 180-inch deer looks like. I mean,
They think
all
they do.
honesty, they do when it's 150. But we've shot some monster bucks that, at the end of the day, that would make Boone and Crockett, where the guys don't give a shit about the Boone and Crockett or the score. It's going to look good on their wall.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a trendy thing, kind of. But
It
like
is.
I've succumbed to it.
I have to. I've done it. I would say the last at least 3 to 4 years. That it's like, I don't know why you do it, but like you said, it definitely gets my hype up a lot more when I'm hunting with you, and you go, I just saw a 320-inch or 350-inch bull coming down this hillside. I'm gonna be like, holy shit! All right, let's go. If he goes, I just saw a 6-point. I don't know how big that 6-point is. It could be. It could be
250.
yeah, it could be a
inches or something.
260-inch 6-point. But when you say something like that, I'm like, okay, like that. That's the animal I want to pursue. I think it helps that situation. But you got to understand what the scoring means, and I feel like a lot of people might use that term and not truly know what the scoring is. I don't know if you see that on the East Coast at all.
So one of the things that I do a lot of the times, and it's just, I guess it's more the humble side of it, is literally like if I'm having a conversation with somebody and we're talking deer, say we're at a show and we're talking deer and they're trying to tell their deer story because I love to hear deer stories. I don't care what it is, if it was a spotted fawn or a 200 incher, it doesn't matter to me. But what I do is I don't talk about anything that I've shot until I've seen a picture or they've told me about the deer, right? Because if you go into a conversation with somebody and you just come charging out with your pictures or your stories or whatever, you don't know the person that you're talking to. So like that guy could probably shoot bigger deer than me. And if I come out bull rushing saying that I shot a 140 and he's shooting 160s or 180s, you're going to look like an idiot. And you're also going to look like an idiot if you come out showing that you shot 130s and 140s and they're only shooting 110s and 120s. So like I try to feel out the situation before you go into the situation. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to be that guy.
So I think
and shaming that person.
So I think the group consensus here is there's a certain group niche of people that we can use those terms to, and it's fine. It's
Certain situations.
certain situations and a certain group of people. And
Dude,
it makes sense.
I tell you what, one of my favorite things, and I think I got this from like when I started guiding, is like I love talking to Eastern and like Southeastern, Northeastern people, like we are with you right now, because you guys are so hard up for whitetail and turkeys. Like it's just like you guys love it, man. It's like you could hunt deer every day, all day for the rest of your life, and whitetail, of course. And I love hearing about it, dude. Because not that like, I mean, of course we have our passions here, but like just the turkey and the deer hunters, man, of the East are like the backbone of the outdoors. I feel like.
Oh, for sure.
I would rather hunt turkeys than anything. I could care less about deer. I just do deer to get me through the fall. Turkey hunting by far is my favorite thing to do. I could care less about anything else, honestly.
I believe
Turkey hunting by far.
What kind of turkeys you guys shooting up there? I don't know. Is it the Easterns only?
We shoot Easterns. Easterns.
Are those bigger
Only
than Merriams?
Easterns.
No,
They're
No.
not.
Merriams are the I believe Merriams are the biggest ones.
I got a question for you. Have you done your Grand Slam yet?
No, I haven't done my slam. No, I have not. I was gonna go shoot a Rio this year, but I'm not going, sadly. I was supposed to be in Kansas actually coming up. I was actually I was supposed to be in Florida Osceola guiding, and I had to turn it down because we had too many shows, and I was gonna have to miss 3 shows, and I couldn't do that.
Oh,
So
That's
but
another thing.
I have not done it.
That's a term difference because I've heard it from other people that it's not called a Grand Slam over. Like they call it. Like, is that exactly what you guys call it, or is there some other term you guys use?
No, Grand Slam is it? Yeah,
I can't remember where.
Grand Slam.
I was watching a video that somebody said it was. I think it was somebody down in Florida shooting or hunting Osceolas. They were doing. They called it something.
Well, when you get ready to do your Grand Slam, you let us know because we'll take you to get your Merriam anyway.
Yeah, Merriam is easy.
Deal, because that's the only one I don't think I could go and kill. I don't have anybody out there to go kill a Merriam yet.
Dude,
I've heard from a lot of people too,
come on
though, that most of them, their last one to actually finish off their Grand Slam is the Osceola, is what I've heard.
Well, I'm sure it's depending on where
It's
you
the
live.
hardest one. It's the hardest one, because it's such a small, little, tiny group of an area, and it's also super expensive. That hunt is like $3,500 for a 3-day hunt, so they kind of save it for the last one.
Right.
Yeah, the Grand Slam, if you do it right, you're looking at about $20,000 to do it, to do
Mhm.
everything.
Maybe
And then you super slam.
plus or minus about whatever area you're in that you have land to hunt, to kill that one species. But still, I mean, let's take an average on that, $2,000 off of that for a turkey hunt. I mean, still, that's.
I'm just happy that we're blessed with the dumbest of this turkey species because it's so much fun to call them because they will come into anything.
That's true.
You don't even have to be good at it.
The eastern mountains are probably one of the hardest turkeys as far as strategy wise to kill. And I think it's they're so overhunted here. And I mean, they're just sometimes a pain in the ass. Honestly, to kill an eastern is sometimes very tough.
I've heard that over and over again. That like Easterns, like you got to work them hard. You got to like your calling has to be on point, and So let me ask you about what is your opinion on decoy work and fanning as a hardcore turkey guy?
So I'm against it, but I'm for it, right? In the right situations. So I did it for the first time last year. I did it with a bow in a bow only hunting area, and it was almost unfair. Honestly, 100% unfair. And the only reason I did it was because it was in a bow only area. If I was to do it, I would never do it in a gun hunting area. Never would I ever.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
Not
I know
here.
that's like
There's
a
too many
big.
people that get
It's like a big topic, like because like to be honest with you, we're not like hardcore turkey hunters. Like we're elk hunters and we're mule deer hunters. That's kind of our main thing, and so like it's kind of like a sub thing that we do. And to get more like
Mhm.
we've gotten more involved in it in the last couple of years, where it's like we like it because in the springtime it's like mini elk hunting. You know what I mean? You're doing the same
Mhm.
thing. You're calling them in. It's like they're little mini elk. So it keeps us covered till
Keeps
till
us
elk-
at bay.
it keeps us our hunting hearts happy until you get through a little bit of fishing and then it's back to archery in September. But I keep seeing that the more and more we get involved in turkey hunting, you hear there's so many like really hardcore opinions on ways to do turkey hunting. Whether there's even like I've heard some really high opinions on like just ways of turkey calling, like doing do's and don'ts and roosting and stuff like that. It's crazy to me. It's like it's a whole other like turkey hunting is like its own entity almost.
Yeah, and that's definitely another thing that like the country is split by, because like we've talked to a lot of guys down from like down south that are like Alan is a huge turkey hunter. He loves it, and it maybe it's because of difference in number on species that you can hunt in that area and things like that. But those guys are just like to the bone turkey hunters, man. It's cool.
Yeah. I love talking to guys like you, Trevor. It's fun to hear different. It's just a different way of life than we live up here.
Yeah, for sure.
And we have the true mini turkey, the true mini elk here in the East Coast also.
Yeah, right.
How do they taste? I'm
No,
gonna be
no, no.
honest.
What's that? The Sika?
No, the Easterns. How do they taste?
You guys shoot those off islands? Those
The Sika?
Yeah.
Eastern Shore, Maryland, and it is one of the hardest hunts you'll ever hunt in your entire life. It's insane.
But can't you hunt them during their rut and stuff? And
it's surreal, honestly. I don't know. I've never hunted out west for real elk, but I'll tell you, the bugling and the mewing is absolutely incredible. You're in the swamp marsh, like we wear waders to get out to these like big pine groves that have been flooded by the Eastern Shore, because you're at and this is going to be crazy to you guys. You literally are at 1 foot of elevation hunting them, and it's underwater, and it is absolutely insane. The bugling, it's if you took a full size elk and put an elastic band around its nuts, and that's what they sound like. It's like this high pitched mouse bugle. And it's just nuts. And when they come out, they're like a big stag is like 100 pounds. They're tiny, tiny. And I missed one this year at 18 yards, and it was literally. And I've called in probably 5 or 6 and literally couldn't get a shot at them because they're in this like swamp grass and you can't even see them and you can't even get a shot at them. It's nuts. They're just insane. They're such cool animals, and they taste phenomenal.
Wow.
I don't remember why. Did Meat Eater do something like that? Did they do a hunt?
Yes,
I've
they
seen.
did.
I've seen one of those before, and I always thought I was like, man, that'd be because I think shooting them out of a tree would be really interesting if you can get up.
It's super hard.
I don't know if this is going to be weird to you or not, but I have never hunted out of a tree stand before. Trevor.
I've never either.
I've never done it.
You hear stories of guys going out west and hunting over wallows and stuff, but that's not like the conventional way of hunting out there, right?
No.
No. The only tree stand hunting I've ever done is because of Matt. They have some stands for whitetail. And another thing that Sean, he just brought up that you might find interesting about the tree stands. Also, I believe, have you shot a whitetail before, Sean?
No, I
So
haven't.
3 of us at this table have never even shot a whitetail. So
Yeah.
that's how different we are.
You guys just don't target them, but they're there.
Yeah, well, actually, there's I don't even know if I want to say it. There is some really good whitetail in Montana.
Yeah.
But it's mostly private land
I've heard.
along the rivers and stuff. Like Matt shot a really nice. I mean, what was yours, like 158 or something like that, or
163.
163? Yeah, it was. It was awesome. Those and we see quite a bit.
Why do you think that is though? Like his question, or I guess his saying that we don't target them. Why do you think that is? Is it
Because we have mule deer, dude. And then we have way more mule deer than we have whitetail.
That's true. I mean, because typically, like when you're hunting mule deer in Montana, depending on what side of the state you're on, it's still the same scenario. Even like in our side of the state, Bull Mountains aren't necessarily these tall, elevated peaks that we're hunting, but yet it's still, elevation change in trees, and then you can go to the West Coast and you get into the true like mountain mule deer, and so. But when you look at whitetail, they're only down in these flats in the bare willows and on the rivers and things like that. So like
Well,
typically you're
that's not necessarily
Okay,
100%
maybe-
true. You guys
maybe
hunt
you're-
mountains where there's whitetail.
yeah, but they're all still they're way low. I mean,
I think
almost to
the I think
flats.
the biggest reason why we hunt mule deer more than whitetail is because we're going out for the day. Whitetail, you're a morning and evening hunt, and mule deer you can shoot at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think your ease of access for opportunity for mule deer is so much higher. Like there's so much mule deer on public land and they're easier to hunt, in my opinion.
I think whitetail are smarter for sure.
Oh yeah, I think
Oh, yeah.
like a mule deer, like you can walk into a mule deer at like 80 yards sometimes, and they just look at you.
Like Trevor, we always talk about this too. Like typical, cognitive response from a mule deer is if you're stalking one and you get too close or they wind you or something, they may bust out of there. Looks like they're gonna be gone, and they'll stop 40 yards from where they were and turn around and give you the over the shoulder mule deer look, and you're like, yep, boom, there you go. Versus like a whitetail. I've been on a couple whitetail hunts, and it's like if they catch wind or if they sense something's wrong, and that doe's nose comes up, that thing is they're gone. It's almost like elk in that scenario where they could be in the next county. It's definitely true.
And that's one thing with whitetail hunting, like strategically hunting whitetails, and you target like us here. When you're trophy hunting, you're targeting that one whitetail, and if you go into that spot and that wind's not right, and you may not see them because it's in thick hardwoods or mountain laurel or whatever, and you might not be able to see that whitetail. But if you bust that whitetail out there, you may never see him for the rest of the season. Like he'll literally be in the next county, and your neighbor's going to end up shooting that deer that you've been targeting all season because you made a bad move, and that thing's completely gone.
And I would almost say totally that would be like almost the opposite of like mule deer hunting, because you could jump the target buck you've been looking for all season that you've had on camera and things like that, and then he could be in there the next day.
Yeah.
I think it all depends on maturity of the mule deer too. Like a lot of big bucks that I've seen that I've bumped and like but I also have a different strategy about when I like go after deer, like mule deer. I'm not gonna really go for a hard bump. If I'm not gonna get in on them unless I think that like we can make a move on them, right? Like I'm a big try not to bump stuff out of the country shit, and it goes with elk too. We do that a lot where it's like if we don't think we can make a legitimate move, we're gonna
we'll
pull
back out and call it a day.
Yeah, we'll pull out every time. And so but I think for like there's some mature mule deer, I think that if you bump them out of their bed, the thing that I heard is like once you bump a mature mule deer out of their bed twice, they'll never come back to it again.
It could be true. I mean, like Ramsey always says too, mule deer, and he says this about elk and just hunting in general, but more than likely you hear him say it of several times a season that mule deer turn into burrowing creatures.
Yeah.
Because you can, I mean, legitimately, you could find them and then figure out a stalk how you want to get in on them, and then you get to where you think you'd be able to see them, and you have no idea where they are.
I mean, look at the deer I shot this year. We had 8 cameras out.
Yeah.
For I don't even know, months and months and months. never saw him once on camera. Just happened to go back in a coulee that we don't
Yeah.
normally go to,
Well,
and there he is.
It's funny because the same thing about the big deer that we had on camera that you and I were like gonna target. We never truly saw him in person.
Me and Riley saw him once, but I mean that was as close as we got. Was what 100
Yeah.
yards.
What's the trail cam laws over in Connecticut?
You can use them. We use them all the time. I mean, I probably run 25 cameras in a season.
Oh yeah, yeah. We it used to be that you could only use cameras here before and after season. You couldn't have one during season, and now you can. You can have them, but you have to only be. You can only
Can't
use.
have the
You have to.
cellular during
Yeah, you have to go like personally check the SD cards every time.
Versus cellular.
But it's nicer. I mean, it helps strategy for hunting.
Can you guys run cellular the entire season?
Yeah, we can run cell, and my whole belief and thought on that is, I grew up in a generation where you had to be actual woodsmen because they didn't have cell cameras. We would use trail timers and all this other stuff. So I have those woodsman skills, and there's been seasons where I don't even hunt with a camera, just to kind of bring it back. And I think that now the newer generation of hunters are relying on those cameras, and they don't have the woodsmanship. And honestly, in my opinion, I wouldn't be against them being gone, to be honest. I really wouldn't. Because
Yeah.
you get so attached to that one animal, and that's your animal or your buck. You know what I'm saying? And like you grow that relationship with that deer, and it kind of gets ridiculous in my opinion.
No, I agree. I see a lot of points, and see, I'm at a place where there's so much area that a couple different places that are so much area that you're not gonna more than likely you're not going to see the same animals, in 2 weeks that you
Right.
saw 2 weeks ago. I've seen it as a tool, but I also get what you're saying, man. There was if you're depending on your deer comes through every day, every Wednesday at 9 o'clock, right? Some people are just hunting Wednesdays at 9 o'clock now, and I think that does take away a little bit from the whole outdoor aspect of it. But even my bull that I shot this year, we didn't even have a camera over there. I've never seen him on camera. So I think for us as the way we use it, it's just more fun for content than anything.
Well, I think too, like take a positive from like the style of how we use cameras in Montana, where you're not allowed to use cellular, so you don't have, during season, so you don't know that deer that you've had pictures of since July is in your spot. The positive you can take from it is it almost builds like a your toolbox as an outdoorsman, because you could go out there and put a camera in a spot that you think looks good and go out there and check the SD card 2 weeks later and have nothing on it. And then that can kind of like boost your outdoor toolbox to be able to better yourself as a whatever target species you're trying to get pictures of, knowing that they're not in that environment.
And I would say that's probably really more singular to us because there's so much land in Montana. That probably doesn't really affect you, Trevor, because you guys don't really have the vast landscape.
Where you're hunting at, Trevor, like how many acres on average are you hunting at a time?
Some of my best properties are under 10 acres.
Wow.
That's
And
crazy.
What would be like a large section to hunt?
I mean, some of the public lands are probably like a big public land for me to hunt here in the state. There's probably 3,000.
Okay.
That is actually shocking.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
seriously, like I had no idea about any of this
Well,
stuff.
yeah, that's why they have a lot of like a lot of eastern states have like shotgun only, bow only, because they're
muzzleloader.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Mhm.
like the ranch we're hunting, I mean, is like 31 miles long by 19 miles wide in one chunk. So, our trail cams, even if we check them, we'll go to the water holes and stuff instead of cameras up in different holes that we found. But I mean, you can be 5 miles from that camera where you actually bust a bull or the deer you've been looking for.
Yeah. That's, I guess, back
Yeah,
to what I
we're
was
waiting.
saying. Go ahead.
No, we're just waiting for that one deer to come through that certain area, and you're looking for those pinch points along a river or whatever that piece of land, and you're waiting for that buck. He might be bedded, 1,000 yards away from it, and you're waiting for him to come through that corridor at a certain time, chasing does in a bedding area or something like that. And it's a small parcel. I mean, I've killed some of my biggest deer on 5 acres. I mean, it's just the way that we hunt here. It's totally different.
So let me ask you this question, because I never knew about this till it was introduced to me by someone from, I think they're from Illinois this year. Some guys that we had down, and they said that there's some whitetail hunting that they do in a certain season where they can hunt in the city. Do you guys have something like that, where there's like city property?
So when I was talking about the baiting only area with unlimited, that's an urban hunting. And it's literally you're hunting acre pieces over bait piles. And that's urban hunting.
I've heard that
And
some
we
of the
try
best
to-
hunting they ever had was on some of those places.
Well, you look at like Seek One, those guys kill absolute giants in Atlanta, Georgia, and they're on an acre piece of land, and they're shooting 200-inch deer in the city.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Oddly enough, and I don't know if you'd ever even imagine that we had that. We actually had an urban hunt in Montana that they were doing. It was a city about 60 miles down the road, and it was for mule deer. What would you call it?
It was like,
Overpopulated.
Yeah, like an overpopulation
management
thing and
hunt.
management hunt. There you go.
yeah.
And so that was interesting. I did that a couple years ago, and it wasn't bad. I mean, there was one point where we had set up our blind, because that was the only way we thought we could really get on any of the deer, is just to be, because it was way past rut and it was in the winter, essentially, deep winter. And I remember we were sitting there in the blind, and some lady was walking her dog 10 yards right by, and just starts walked by with her dog. And I was like, I might not do this
That's
again.
a weird feeling for sure.
And that's one of the things. I mean, I've hunted on a swing sets before here in the urban hunting, or you have the tree stand that's like right in the lady's backyard, and she's cooking, barbecue on the back porch, and there's whitetails at the bait pile, and you're shooting whitetails and watching Jerry Springer on her big screen. I mean, like, that's normal here in some of these areas.
I love it, man. I mean, it really connects. The outdoors as a whole is just so many different realms of possibility, and I love it. I love hearing about what you guys are got going over there, and that's kind of what brings our community together. It's like everyone doing their outdoor adventures and doing the most important thing, and that's getting out, enjoying the outdoors, whether you do it by yourself or with your friends or family, enjoying those memories. And I think it's awesome, man. I think it's really cool.
Absolutely.
So we're getting. Are you still good on time? Do we got to get going here? Or you talk a little bit more? Or?
Yeah, I got a couple more minutes for sure.
Okay, so we're just gonna end this. We always do this when we have some sort of either in studio or on Zoom call interview, where we just kind of go around the table here, and we're just gonna ask you questions. And we might even ask you what your favorite ice cream flavor is. You know what I'm saying? But we like to like to just throw out some random questions and just kind of get to know you as a person. It's just kind of fun. It's fun for us, and just to know some cool things. And it take 5 minutes, might take a half an hour, but that's kind of how we're gonna end things here. Sound good to you?
Absolutely.
So who wants to start us off?
Oh, I gotta know, because you're an archery guy. What's your brand?
Actually, I shot for Elite for a ton of years, and I actually just went back to Obsession.
Okay.
I was hoping it was going to be Hoyt or Matthews and you could settle it, but
No. No.
How many? We've got two Hoyts in, or no? What are you?
He's
Bear.
He's a
Oh yeah, he's a
bear.
bear guy. We got two Matthews, a Hoyt, and a bear guy in here, and the Matthews versus Hoyt discussion comes up quite a bit.
I'll never shoot a Hoyt if that answers the question.
Let's
Let's
They're
go.
the only ones that make a bow long enough for me.
This is actually kind of that story about Ramsey buying that bow. That was really funny. I mean, he seriously went into that thinking, I might buy a Matthews.
That's bullshit.
He went in there into the back room of the bow shop and drew that Matthews once and put it down, and then grabbed the Hoyt, and he sat there and shot that thing 25 times. And we're like, you made your decision before you even walked in there, you liar.
I am who I am, okay?
Yeah.
All right, who's next? Me?
Yeah.
Oh God, I wasn't ready. I thought we were gonna go.
Wait, I got one for you. You've been in your truck this whole time. What brand of truck is your favorite?
Toyota. I'm a Toyota guy.
That's a safe answer.
That's
I like that.
That is a safe.
Because you know that everyone was on edge to jump on you if you were a Ford, Chevy, or Dodge guy.
Yeah.
So we have a saying is if you pull up to a piece of public and a dude's driving a Ford, you know that you can go in there and hunt because he's not going to kill anything.
Oh,
But if you see a Toyota,
Wow.
if you see a Toyota, you don't go anywhere near that public because that dude is a killer, hands down.
I'm 2 strikes here. God damn.
Yeah, that's
That's awesome. I love
So,
that.
so I got a question for you. You've been driving for what, an hour and a half now? How far is your studio from your house?
Studio from my house is an hour.
How many
Holy
miles?
wow.
I don't. It's probably 45 miles, probably.
It's a little further than you have to go.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing is a lot of our clients that come up and they're like, how far is it from Billings to Hardin? You're like, I don't know, an hour. Well, how many miles? Like 65 to the ranch. And, 65 miles back east can take you 3 or 4 hours. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of an ironic thing because like we don't do nothing by mileage up here. It's always by the hour. Like,
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
far is
yeah.
Bozeman? 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been to Connecticut, or anywhere. The farthest east I think I've ever been is
John, could you point out Connecticut on a map?
yes.
I think I could.
It's somewhere in the upper right. I think I could do it.
It's small.
It is very small. I had a buddy that went to
Very small.
Yale, so I know. Actually, can't even remember what the town Yale or what town is Yale in.
New Haven.
Yeah, that's right. That's the name of it. I knew that at one point in my life.
Yep.
I'm pretty.
Yeah, it's about 55 minutes from me, from door to door.
So that's about what, like 100 or maybe 12 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, just about that.
Okay.
All right. Unless it's like Grandma Cheryl's secret recipe, right now, what's the best way to eat turkey?
Oh, I honestly, I love the way I cook it. I take it and I put it in a just a like an oven pan, and I put Lipton, the onion dip on it, and cream and mushroom, and I bake it, and it's absolutely phenomenal.
I love it. That's like so similar to one of our elk recipes, dude.
Yeah,
Love it.
Yeah.
It is.
Matt cooks everything with French onion soup mix, dude, and it makes everything so good.
That's good to know.
All right, Rams.
What?
You got more?
No.
You're out? You're tapped out
All right,
already?
I got one. So I know you. Are you more? I got this is a little 2-parter. Are you more of a archery hunter or a rifle hunter?
Oh, archery through and through, no questions asked.
Okay,
Same
so
here,
then
brother.
The second part of my question would be, when you are doing your rifle hunting, what rifle are you using?
So it's kind of crazy. So going back on what you guys were saying with like urban hunting and stuff, I don't really have any rifle properties here, like because we're so urban or suburb that I don't even hunt with a rifle. Most of my hunting is done with a CVA, muzzleloader, because you're not. And this is going to be crazy to you guys, but I don't think I've shot a deer over 80 yards in my entire life.
Wow.
I don't think I've shot a deer under 80.
I don't think I've shot a
I'm just
deer under
kidding.
80. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We have. But
Yeah.
no, that's awesome, dude. I think it's cool. We're big bow hunters here, so we respect the grind for sure.
I would rather pick up my bow than a rifle.
Oh,
that's
me
for
too.
sure.
It's so much more fun. And it comes in tact with your like primal instincts, as a bow hunter. Like it gets primal.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you got any more? No, sir. Oh my gosh, these guys are weak tonight. Let me think here. I had one and I lost it.
Really? That's never happened before.
It was a fishing question. Are you like a classic Eastern bass guy, or are you more of an ocean guy?
No, so I'm strictly saltwater fishing now. I don't think the last time that I freshwater fished, I couldn't even think of it, to be honest with you. So I'm a bass fisherman, but a saltwater bass fisherman. I do light tackle charters. So we do a lot of top water fishing for big striped bass. I'm known for trophy striped bass. People come from all over just to catch their trophy striped bass here.
I was gonna ask you because I feel like you're in that. Are you not in that region where the striped bass do the runs that you try to hit every year? They come in big groups. I've seen this somewhere, and yeah,
Dude, it's insane here. The striped bass fishing is incredible. We start about right about now is when we start fishing in the rivers. The smaller fish, they start to fall out of the rivers. About June, we start to fish in the Sound. And then July and August is when we see the cows, what we call the cows. And that's your 50 pounders, your 40 and 50 pound striped bass is right around July and August. And that's Eastern here. That's what we're known for.
that's awesome, man. I've always watched. Actually, I think where I really watched is guys were doing top water flies for striped bass out of a boat, and that just I'm a big fly fisherman, so that really that really excites me to do something like that someday. But I think that we've got about an hour and a half here, man. I think we've had a great time. It was really cool to get to know you and talk to another fellow podcaster. It's been really good
This was
time,
a
man.
ton of fun.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was an absolute blessing. Couldn't thank you guys enough. We'd love to reciprocate and have you boys on the outdoor drive. I think it would be
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
fun.
That'd be awesome.
Hey, you name the day. You give me a time and place, and we'll all be there. So, you got anything to plug today? Instagram, Facebook.
I mean, if you search the Outdoor Drive, you'll find us on all social media platforms. You can go to theoutdoordrive.com. Hopefully have our merchandise out there sooner than later. But like I said, man, I really appreciate you guys having us on, dude, and look forward to doing something with you guys in the future.
Awesome, man. Let's stay in touch. I like to be a big motto of ours is like we like to make friends instead of just acquaintances. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
And we damn sure like to have you back next year to come get you Miriam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come do some turkey hunting down here.
Yeah, and vice versa. You boys, if you guys ever want to come up striper fishing on the East Coast or kill an Eastern or whatever,
That sounds
you
like a
guys
good
always got a
trade.
place here.
Yeah,
Yeah, sounds like a great
Yeah.
trade.
definitely.
We're gonna end things here. Trevor, stay on. We're gonna talk to you a little bit when we close here. Everything that we're gonna need to talk about that we normally talk about at the end, we'll talk about in the intro.
Yeah, for sure.
We're gonna end this right here. As always, we'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Bull Mountain Brothers.
Hey, if you're looking for more Bull Mountain Brothers, be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Bull_Mountain_Brothers and Facebook and YouTube at Bull Mountain Brothers.
Also, don't forget to check out our B&B store at bullmountainbrothers.com, where you can find some super sweet deals on some seasonal merchandise and outdoor gear.